Alrighty, amazing. So what I like to do, while we're waiting on everyone or while I'm kind of doing the introduction is have those who are here, if you feel up to it, just throw your name in, maybe what you do in the industry or at least what you're looking to get out of the workshop. You can feel free to do that. But thank you so much for joining us. This is our fifth workshop. So one more to go in the series. And today we're just going to be talking about navigating Afrobeats, reggae, and dancehall in the Canadian music industry. I have Chope and Amoy with me today. Thank you guys so much for, giving us your time and being a part of this to kind of just share your experience with us. Before I let you guys kind of give us a little introduction about yourselves, I'll just give an introduction. I am a singer, songwriter, music producer. Um, work mostly on the creative side of things, but in starting in that side of the industry, I kind of had an interest that sparked in what goes on behind the scenes. So management and all the business aspects, and that kind of led me to go study music management at Harris Institute in Toronto. And from there, just working in studios, putting on workshops and networking, and all of that kind of got me to um, where I am now, director of operations at Afrowaveto. Um, a little bit about Afrowave for attendees and those who may watch this after who aren't as familiar. Afrowave TO is set on this mission to kind of help to bridge this void that we saw in the industry, specifically the Canadian music industry, where there weren't a lot of workshops and performance opportunities for people in what we call culturally derived sound. So genres that are really influenced by culture, like reggae and reggaeton and dancehall, soca, Afrobeats. So that is our mission, to provide artists who are in those genres, aspiring managers, etc., to have access to resources, workshops like these, performance opportunities through our showcases. And we've been doing this for 3 years now. Started out as live showcases, and then just pivoting to virtual stuff with COVID, i.e., these workshops. But thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I'm gonna throw it over to Amoy. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Just for the attendees, the full bio is up on Eventbrite if you'd like to read a little bit more about Amoy and Chope. But just kind of hand it over to them. Amoy?
Thank you. So I'm originally from Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
I migrated in my teen years after I finished high school, and I migrated here to live with my mom. And
Mm-hmm.
I've always been in music. I started from Jamaica singing in the church choir. I was raised by my grandparents who had us singing in the church choir. So
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with music automatically. At first, though, I was very scared and shy to perform.
Yeah.
But the more that they pushed me into it, the more that I did it, the more comfortable I
Mm-hmm.
got with it and recognized that I did have a talent. And I fell in love with it so much that I started writing my own songs. I started writing poems first and then turned them into songs. Came to Canada, lived with my mom, joined the church choir here in Toronto. And then I saw people like Julie Black doing the music on a professional level. And I was like, okay, if they're doing it, I can do it too then.
Mm-hmm.
It became such a passion for me. You know, I fell in love with it so much that I was attending Seneca College for travel and tourism because I knew too that I wanted to travel the world. And I
Yeah.
was trying to please my family because they didn't want me to go into music professionally. But as I was doing that, I recognized, I say this all the time, that I recognized I was feeding my pocket and starving my soul. And I could no longer do that. I needed to do what I know that I love and enjoy, and that's music.
Yeah.
And so I decided from then that I was going to pursue my music professionally, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing that ever since. It's now given me 5 Juno nominations, and last year I got my first Grammy consideration for that new body of work, Water. And so, yeah, and
Amazing.
here we are.
Thank you, Amoy. Chope?
Powerful story, Moy. It's
Thank
interesting
you.
because our
Definitely.
can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, our stories read kind of similarly, right? So I was born and raised in Nigeria until I was 11 years old, and then we immigrated here. Same immigrant kind of like story and experience of parents trying to build a better life for their kids here. And so I came
Mm-hmm.
here. I was on kind of, I was supposed to become a doctor, like any good African boy, lawyer, doctor, engineer, architect,
Yeah.
maybe. Well, lawyer, doctor, engineer, you're certified, you're solidified. And so I was supposed to become a doctor. And for a while, I would say like I even wanted to be a doctor. So this was kind of like I understood math, I understood science, I was in school, and then I made the mistake of trying music, right? It's just a
He
deadly
said the
mis
mistake.
The
deadly.
mistake.
I'm being sarcastic. I'm being very
I know
sarcastic,
that.
of course, right? But yeah, it's interesting. Like similar to Amoy, like so I came up in the church as well, right? And so
Mhm.
I had a very deeply spiritual experience when I was 14 years old. And interesting, at that point in time, I was consuming a lot of gospel music, a lot of Christian music,
Mhm.
a little known genre called Christian hip hop, which is just like rappers, but they're rapping about like the faith in Jesus and all
Right.
that
So
stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I found that stuff to be so powerful and so transformative of the way I
Mhm.
was thinking at the time. And I'm like, yo, I didn't know that people could make this kind of music and actually sound dope and it not be corny and cheesy.
Mhm.
You get what
Right.
I'm saying? I was like, yo, this actually bangs. And because I was enjoying it so much, because it was feeding my soul, I was literally consuming it much quicker than they were
Yeah.
producing it, right? And almost like similar to Amoy, I'm like, listen, I wonder if I can do this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I remember like the first thing, I don't remember what I wrote, but I remember the little, I don't know anyone who's ever come up in church, they have those little offering envelopes.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember
Tithe envelopes. The tithe
That
envelopes.
yeah.
exactly, exactly. I remember taking some of those and like just scribbling poems on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I shared it with a couple of my friends and like, yo, Chopin Chope, you're really, really good at this. And like I said, it was a mistake because that was all I needed, right?
Right.
And so that kind
Little
of
hype
like,
up.
right, that kind of like began to kind of like take me a little bit off course. And so I literally spent like the next 6 years because this was happened when I was 14 when I first tried my hands at making music.
Right.
In hindsight, I was always creative because before music, I used to dance and I used to do like acting and whatnot. So I guess in hindsight, making and writing music was just like a different creative expression.
Right.
Nonetheless, that kind of like set me off course. I'm doing that in quotes. And I started spending the next couple of years trying to figure out like, man, like medicine is secure. It's what I'm supposed to
Mm-hmm.
do. I can do it, I understand it, but well, music is just so like risky, but is this what I want to do? But as the years progressed, as I did it more, as I began to go more out there and do more shows, I found that not only was the external affirmation growing, but my love and passion for it was growing as well. And it
Mm-hmm.
was in my second year at University of Toronto that I had that epiphany. I remember it very clearly. I was in
Yeah.
lecture. I was only there in body, but I wasn't there in spirit. Do you get what I'm saying?
Exactly. Right.
And I'm like, it just dawned on me because I'd been really thinking like, do I really want to like cast it all off and just like do this? And in that moment, it was a eureka moment for me. And I don't know how to describe it beyond just I zoned out and I instantly came back in like, of course this is what I'm supposed to do. And of course this is what I'm gonna do. Because nothing fit, like nothing gave me as much joy, as much passion as I experienced when I was making music and when I was performing and seeing how the music was touching the people. And in that moment, I decided, you know what? I'm still going to graduate like a good African boy because I can't take the stress of dropping out. So I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? But once I'm done, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna go to med school. I'm gonna pursue music, and then
Mm-hmm.
that's ultimately what I did. And then as the years progressed, my personal I don't want to take up too long in the intro, sorry, but
Oh
there
no, no, go ahead.
something amazing started to happen as well because one of the kind of like parallel stories that was taking place this whole time from coming to Canada was that in the
Mhm.
interest of quickly assimilating and not being the weird African kid, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And I got all of the keys and everything you can imagine that they say to the immigrant African, the poor African immigrant, I got all of it, you know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And so I was quick to kind of like assimilate and jettison that part of my culture. And all the time, My dad used to say this thing to me. He used to say, "Shopway, don't forget where, like, we're grateful for Canada, but don't forget where I'm from, right?"
Mhm.
And then the more time I spent here, the more I began to realize, like, yo, this is actually how the Western world was built. It's okay, it's cool. Y'all got some things right, but there's definitely a lot of skeletons in there.
Absolutely.
You feel
Yeah.
me?
Absolutely. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
more the more that happened, and the more I just began to mature, I began to value my culture and my heritage a lot more.
Right.
And naturally, I started reconnecting, rediscovering, and the music. My music has always been a picture of where I am in life, and so that just started to bleed into my
Mhm.
music. And that's
Yeah.
how I went from making purely rap and hip hop and R&B to like making more Afrofusion. And it was
Right.
when I made that transition of actually blending these two parts of my culture that the world and the industry and all these opportunities started opening
Started
up to
painting.
me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's just providential because I was finally living in the fullness of who God created me to be.
Exactly.
And then the world opened up, and that's where we are now today. Sorry,
Mhm.
long intro, but that's kind of like
No, that's okay.
Amazing. I love
I'm
that.
gonna hand the workshop over to you too, because you're so eloquent and you like knocked out about 4 or 5 of my questions, and I'm here like, okay, like, what am I gonna ask now? But thank you so much. I hear a lot of similarities, and I think, um, like us three being here and having a lot of things. Like for me, I started in church too. Both my parents were ministers.
Mhm.
When I was growing up, we had to be on the choir by like 6, and we used to have like church rallies, and being
yeah,
the pastor's
yeah.
kid, you get a solo. Like you have
Oh
to
yeah.
have a
Oh
solo,
yeah.
and then and it's whether or not you can sing. Like you have to be able to sing in that moment.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then you would have like
yeah.
church concerts and church rallies, as we call them, and like you
Right.
have this thing where the audience has to pay for you to come down. So each
Right.
person is like $50, and then they're like, oh, this one looks like the pastor's kid, so you're $100, and you're you're up there. It's so similar. And then Chope, you saying like second year university, we're like, yeah, like I want to do
What I
music.
need to do. Yeah.
I actually my parents were always very supportive of my music, investing in a lot of things for me. And it's after like getting to a certain age that I was able to like look at that and be grateful and appreciate that, because there were so many
Mhm.
of other people sharing the stories of
I
like,
don't
you have
have
to
that.
like,
Mhm.
I have to do this behind the scenes. I can't let my
Yeah,
parents know what I'm doing. But even with that, I was at Ryerson doing law and business, because I'm like,
yeah.
music can't be plan A. Like you have to have a
Mhm.
plan B. And
Right.
I got to like second year, and it went from me like showing up every day with my pencil case like all laid out and my books and everything, to like me not even really showing up. And I was like I was into school. I was like straight A's all the time. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
that was a clear like message for me, like not even having the interest to go. And like I'd sit there and like I'm hearing everything, but I'm not listening. And
Exactly.
then I think even like deciding to go to school to study music was probably like a compromise. Like, okay, I'm gonna do
Mm.
music, but I'm gonna study it so that
Well,
there's the education part of it. You can't say I just like dropped out and did
Right.
nothing.
yeah.
Right. Right.
So I think it's just interesting because just us three being here and having those kind of similarities, and I hear it all the time. It's a similar story all the
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
So just like transitioning from that, I guess the question I do want to ask is, why choose to stay? And like Chope, you talked about just bringing the influence of your African origins into your music, and that's when you felt like
So
you were
important.
really there, and even bringing your Jamaican roots more into your music. Why choose to stay in Canada? Like we hear this conversation all the
Mhm.
time, how
Mhm.
all the Canadian musicians are moving to the US. And
Right.
people like me who've like gone back home to like try it out,
Yeah.
back there.
Yeah.
Why do you choose to stay and pursue music in Canada?
Well, I love Canada. I came to when I came to Canada,
Mm-hmm.
the opportunities opened up for me. I recognized. I mean, living in Jamaica, it's a beautiful island. The music there is so readily available, obviously, for reggae music. But coming to Canada, there's has been challenges. But what I do appreciate about Canada is that they have the funding body
Mm-hmm.
support that you can get, the opportunities for
For sure.
artists who are independent like myself to create their music without worrying about the finances too much, because you have the
Mm-hmm.
factor, the granting bodies like Factor has been instrumental in my career. Factor Toronto Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, the Star Making Fund, Orion Fund, so and SOCAN, like all of these you know establishments that have supported my career. If I was outside of Canada, if US, they don't have that. They don't have that. It's they have to depend on the labels or themselves. And as much as it's for me, depending on my own resources, the resources from all of these establishments in Canada has helped me. And that's one of the reasons why I love being a Canadian citizen, because we have that support that we don't get outside of Canada.
Very true. Yeah. How about you, Chopin?
That's a beautiful question. And I'd love to be very honest, like with these conversations, right? I believe
Yeah.
in optimizing your life
Mm-hmm.
and taking advantage of every possible asset that you can take advantage of. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, and I'll explain what I mean by that. I don't think it's disingenuous. I think it's just the reality of what it means to be a human being, meaning that there are benefits to being a Nigerian, and I'm going to take advantage of those benefits, right? And there are
Mm-hmm.
benefits to being a Canadian, and I'm going to take advantage of those
Mm-hmm.
benefits.
Exactly.
There are benefits to being in the United
Yeah.
States, and if you have access to those benefits, definitely take advantage of those things, right? And so, if I could speak very plainly,
Mm-hmm.
staying in Canada, it's almost like it's a duality that you kind of have to contend with. You have to appreciate all of the funding and all of the granting bodies that exist, absolutely, and I've been a benefactor of them. So never, ever, 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 ever will I speak down on the Canadian arts establishment because they do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work to support independent
Yes.
acts. You get what I'm
Yes.
saying? So I will never, ever
That's
speak
true.
ill of them. That said, my eyes are also very open, right? And one of the things I've come to learn is that that does a lot of good. And the way I see it, any Canadian artist,
Mm-hmm.
specifically those in what you called culturally derived sounds,
Mm-hmm.
like ours,
Mm-hmm.
I think you should use the grants to do two things. Number one, to stimulate your local economy, namely like to
Mm-hmm.
build your buzz here.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it would be very prudent for you to, if possible, use some of that to tap into other markets. Because
And
I mean,
yes, I agree with that. And
right,
because of that, I'm able to do that and travel and go around the world and share my music, not just within Canada, but I've been to the States, I've been to Asia, Shanghai, I've been to Europe, Serbia, I've been to South America, all over the world, actually, because I have the support that as enables me to be able to travel and get my music out there to the world, not just within Canada. So I do
absolutely,
agree with that.
absolutely. And to be frank, like for a lot of these granting bodies, that is part of their mandate. Part of their mandate is to export Canadian talent across the world.
Exactly.
Because I
Yeah.
think even if we're to speak very plainly and very honestly, I think even they know that particularly for our sound, maybe not other genres, but
Yeah.
particularly for our genre, there
Yeah.
just isn't a sustainable market in the country. That's
Isn't
just
infrastructure? Yeah, for
there's
them.
you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Yeah.
numerically speaking, there aren't enough people to sustain a lot of acts
Mm-hmm.
doing this full time. Like just really look
Definitely.
Yeah.
at a very
Hmm.
Very
basic
true.
economics of the country. There just aren't that many people
Yeah.
who
Mm-hmm.
subscribe to, first of all, the category of urban music. Because once you leave Toronto, diversity is no longer really what it is. For real. You know what I'm
That
saying?
is very true.
Yeah.
Urban music, and not just urban music like hip hop and R&B. That's part of it, but then you go a little further into reggae, reggaeton, Afrobeats,
Exactly.
etc.
It's yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
And so I think you would be prudent to use some of this funds to actually try to develop your economy, both within the country and also outside. And I
Abroad.
think what we've seen about some of the most successful Canadian artists who have gone international, they've been very intentional in
Yes.
maintaining a stronghold in the city, a foot in the city, because you have to remember where
Absolutely.
you're coming from, and you have to
Absolutely.
remember that they were a key part of your success. So for me, that's kind of how I assess everything. I'm very aware of the benefits I have in Canada, but at the
Hmm.
same time, I'm trying to figure out how do I leverage all of the different things that I have access to, both locally and internationally, in
Yeah.
order to build a sustainable career out of what I'm doing. So that's kind of like how I view the whole situation.
And I love that point
Listen.
about not never forgetting where you come from, because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I am Jamaican. I will always be a Jamaican, right? And reggae
Mm-hmm.
is my base. Gospel music is my base. And for me, doing reggae, because reggae comes from Jamaica, I have to go. I've had to go back to Jamaica, and
Absolutely.
still make sure that the people there, my people at home, know who I am and what I'm doing. I've
Mm-hmm.
gotten support from the newspaper, the Observer, the Star, that promotes my releases when I'm there. I've gone there to record my album and work with the producers there. in Jamaica. And what I call my music really a fusion, just like you're saying, Chope, blending the culture
Yeah.
of I'm known for in Jamaica, and then coming here and being introduced to all these different influences within the different
Mm-hmm.
genres of music and fusing it with my
Mm-hmm.
reggae,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
they can appreciate what I do in from both sides, the
Different.
Canadian
Yeah.
side and the
Yeah.
Jamaican side, and then worldwide influence that
Yeah.
I've heard
Mm-hmm.
around the world and put and fuse it into my music because I love an Afrobeat, and I right now I'm
Yeah.
actually working
Same.
on fusing my reggae with some Afrobeats right now. So
Yes.
that's what I
Yeah.
have coming out, and then
Yeah.
coming up
Yeah.
in the kitchen cooking up right now. So I love
Yeah.
that. I love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah. And to
Yeah. You
just
see.
to further accent Amoy's point,
Yeah.
that the fact that as Canadians, Amoy has the benefit of going to Jamaica, tapping into Jamaican influences and Canadian influences and
Yeah.
international influences. All these different things are going to be her distinctiveness. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
if she just
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
implants it and just said, "I'm gonna go to the U.S. and pursue the U.S. and just do all that alone," it'd be much easier to just sort of like get lost in the mix because you begin to
Yeah.
look and sound like everybody else. But the fact
Exactly.
that she has access to all of these different opportunities and all of these different environments, you know, what I'm saying, a lot of it owing again to Canada,
Mhm.
she's unique wherever she goes, right? I'm
Mhm.
unique wherever I go, and so
Mhm.
that's one of the additional benefits of finding a way to still stay connected to Canada, even as you seek to do
Travel the
things
world.
internationally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. See, I told you guys are just like answering all my questions here because my next question was literally, how does back home, like for you, Nigeria, Chopin, and then Jamaica for you, Amoy, what part does it play like in your careers now? You guys just like knocked out all the answers there. But one thing that you did touch on, that was very important because I remember even for myself as an artist, like being back in living in Jamaica before migrating, I'm like, you guys keep trying to push me into reggae, not because I'm from Jamaica, because I'm a reggae artist, and I was just, and I don't know if it's like human nature, like when you have one thing, you always think the grass is greener on the other side,
Right.
or if it's
Right.
just exploration of like doing different genres. And in Jamaica, there's this like they say North America sneezes and we catch a cold. So so it's there's a strong like North American culture here.
Oh
So
yeah, for
there's
sure.
a lot of pop, a lot of EDM, and even though that actually had its origins, Jamaican origins and stuff. But
For sure.
what was interesting for me was moving to Canada ended up pushing me right into reggae, and it becoming a fusion of like it was like I don't know if it was a way to hang on to home,
Yeah,
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah,
And
but
yeah,
it
represent
became,
home.
yeah,
Yeah.
and represent home. But it just became this interesting thing where even you could get like a straight reggae beat and it still ends up sounding like a fusion when you actually put the lyrics and everything on
Right.
top of it, because now you've become your experiences as an artist, and
Exactly.
it's hard for you to just like box yourself in having
yeah,
Yeah.
these kind of like cultural experiences. But one thing I also noticed too, like you were saying, I'm more like working on Afrobeat stuff and kind of incorporating that into what you do,
Mhm.
was that being a community where, for example, like Chope, you with Afrobeats and the Afrobeats community, just trying to elevate and represent, in that way. And then the reggae community, reggae and dancehall, or like,
Mhm.
reggaeton.
Mhm.
What I see is that a lot of times it becomes where all these small, separate communities are working on the same goal, and then it becomes this one big community. So now you have like reggae artists that are working with Afrobeats artists, and um, you have artists in Canada that are doing, collaborations with
Yeah. All
people
these
back
collaborations
home. And
happening. Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
it's such a beautiful thing to
Absolutely.
see, and it's like everyone's trying to find home, but still represent for being, having the Canadian experience, and it just
Yeah.
creates this like one big thing. So how does that play out for you guys in your lives? Like, do you have collaborations back home? Is that a market that you're pushing for in terms of? I know you talked about it, Amoy, but maybe more from you, Shope. Like, is it a market that you're simultaneously trying to tap into with the Canadian market? Have you received like any recognition there, like any reception for your music there as well? Like, what do you have going on back home that you're working on while being in Canada?
yes, yes to all of that. So Yeah, I'm very grateful. Like my last two projects, I've had two teams working on
Mm-hmm.
it, a North American team and an African team. And I'm thankful that I have like an entire PR and marketing arm that's HQ'd in Nigeria and are
Mm-hmm.
pretty deeply entrenched with the who's who in the industry. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the most like the last my 2020 project Riki Key, they helped promote that. They got some really nice looks for that. My most recent one that I dropped end of July, beginning of August, they're also marketing that as well. We've had some pretty good inroads with that, and we're about to have some additional things, campaigns that are actually about to kick off within the next week. So to answer your question, absolutely, exactly. Whenever I'm dropping a project, I know that like it's I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. I don't know if I would say it's more important, but I know it's incredibly important.
Important.
It's incredibly important for me to have my voice and my face and my presence seen, heard, and felt in the country, right?
Yeah.
So what we did when I first established contact with them 2 years ago was pretty much chart out like what does the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years look like for Shokwe in the Nigerian market. You get what I'm saying? And what things can we do to help increase your exposure here? And so we're kind of like along the timeline where the 1, 2, 3, 4 question we're actually in the 2 year mark at this point. Basically, where we're working through that campaign, we've done a lot of things already, and we've got other things which are set to do. And it's just a matter of like being consistent with it. Like, thankfully, my songs are playing all over radio, all over the country, have been for several weeks, have been
Yeah.
for several years at this point in time. A lot of the players know my name, and it's just a matter of further strengthening those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And we have strategies for how we are going to do that. So to answer your question, absolutely, it's an active part of anything that I drop, which is like, all right, I'll hit up my guy like, yo, Chooks, what are we doing for this? And how are we going to get in contact with, how are we going to touch
Yeah.
that market? Even as I have a parallel team doing similar things in North America.
Yeah, it's important to
Yeah.
market not just here in Canada, market back home as well.
Absolutely.
And my question to that, we're talking about tangible tips. How do you go about finding? Because you both work with teams, right? You both have
Yeah.
a. Yeah, how did you transition from, I'm doing this. I'm interested in doing this. I'm doing this by myself. I'm putting out stuff I want to sing. To having a team, especially in the genres that you work in. I know that for hip hop and R&B, there's such a large community. So how did you find people to be a part of your team and to help push your music for those emerging artists that may be on and are looking
Mhm.
to do that? Especially, I guess you could both talk about it. Having someone or having people that are working with you in Canada and working with you in Jamaica or
Outside.
in Nigeria. How did you do that?
For me, it was all about building the right relationships with the right people, doing my
Mm-hmm.
research, and putting myself out there, and in a unique way where people were taking me seriously and would approach me,
Mm-hmm.
and I would approach them too and seek them out myself as well,
Yeah.
actively, and then building these relationships with these people that I know had some impact within the industry and were able to execute my vision with integrity and not losing the vision of what I knew I had for myself, but they understood what my vision was and was able to help me execute it. It was all
Yeah.
about building these solid relationships, and most of these people that I've worked with, I'm still working with. A lot of them are working behind the scenes, but they're still a part of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And then continuing to build those relationships wherever I go around the world. I seek out the right people. I'm introduced to. I allow myself to be in the situations where I can be introduced to the right people, and stay in contact with these people. Even though when I leave their countries, and collaborating with different artists as well has helped me thus far, and
Mm-hmm.
producers from these countries have helped me thus far as well. So it's always for me, it's all about building relationships and maintaining those relationships that has
Yeah.
gotten me the team that I've gotten thus far.
I
Absolutely.
think that's interesting. Just before we get to you, Shope, because I hear two things that come up in every series, probably in every workshop. I'm saying this with panelists, just kind of giving their stories, like knowing yourself and networking. Like those
Yeah,
are the two things that
yeah,
have come up
yeah,
in every single workshop for the last 3 years, and I think you really hit on that, Amoy. Like sticking to your vision
yeah.
and also putting yourself out there. I see where a lot of people, and I think it's hard as an independent artist to step outside of yourself because music is one of those things where you are the product,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
if
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
haven't like started a business where you're probably making a product or you're helping to sell a product, then you
Mm-hmm.
don't fully recognize how what is the word, how integrated you are, you know, as the product. And it's hard for you to be like, oh wait, like I am selling me basically in terms of
Yeah.
what I do.
Absolutely.
If without
Absolutely.
Amoy, there's no Amoy's music. Without Chopin, there's no Chopin's music.
Exactly.
So it
Exactly.
becomes so hard to like be like, okay, I need to, you know, not not be so what is it like have it you need to separate it. That's the word. Kind of look at it
Right.
like, okay, personal business. And I find that sometimes that's an obstacle for independent artists. It's just kind of recognizing that, yeah, you are making the music, you are doing the creative side, but you are also the brand, and like
The
putting yourself
product.
out there and
Yeah.
networking. Yeah,
Yeah.
you are the thing that is being
Yeah.
sold. So it's just interesting for you to bring that point up, because it's come up so many times. It doesn't matter
Times.
if
I
we're
bet.
talking
I
about
bet.
royalties, if we're talking
Yeah.
about contracts, if we're talking about marketing. It's the
It's
same
true.
two things over and over again, you know.
One of
But
the things
Shopri,
that my
you were
before you go into it, before you
go
go
ahead.
into, I just want before I forget this thought. One of the
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
one of the most profound things that my manager says to me is that you are your best
mm-hmm.
marketing tool. You personally, you need to be in that room as much as
Yeah.
I'm in the room.
You
You
need
need
to
to
be
be in there
there. Yeah,
selling yourself because you're your
yeah,
best marketing tool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you say that too, just because um I've heard that too from people in the industry. It's like people people don't necessarily buy the product. So the music itself, it's your why, and it's who you are, and it's the emotion that you know, kind of
Your
bring
story.
out in what you do. And so sometimes, you know, being behind the music so much so that there isn't a sense of you as a person can create this like barrier between you and the
Right.
person who
Right.
could potentially buy your music. So I think that's actually a great point, because people will support you for who you are, especially in this generation where there's like social media. Like, you can't hide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't hide
Exactly.
away from people.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of times someone will just go on your page and just gravitate to who you are as a person, and they probably wouldn't even listen to your genre, but they like your vibe, you know.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's very interesting. But Shope, you can kind of jump into your point. We kind of jumped ahead if you
I know.
but
Sorry,
how
Sophie.
did you go about like finding a team? We're all inspired here. It
Right.
happened.
No, listen, I'm not just here to like talk. I'm here to listen as well and learn
And learn.
Mhm.
Yeah.
from both of
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
as well. So
very
powerful
true.
points. Um, so I would love to say it's easy and straightforward and it's going to happen quickly, but
Hmm.
that doesn't really happen to many people, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I would say a couple of things. You have to be like play the long game, right? So
Yeah.
have a long term perspective in mind. That's number one, and number two. One of the things one of my friends said to me when I was kind of like making this transition from like hip hop to like Afrofusion R&B, and it's like, dude, you're kind of going into like a new kind of genre where you're gonna have to reestablish yourself,
Hmm.
and it said you just have to become undeniable, right? And that's kind of what it needs to do in order to like start forming these relationships that Amoy is saying. Like, if we're just going to speak very plainly, and I've kind of gotten to the point where I just want to do that because I'm not serving anyone if I'm not speaking plainly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You have
True.
to
Very
think
true.
about it like very honestly. Like, this person who I'm trying to build a relationship with, why would they want to build a
Hmm.
relationship with me? Like, what do I have to
Right.
offer them, right?
Hmm.
Because in this industry, you're gonna have like, oh, my brother, my sister, oh, we're family, so on and so forth. But like, none of that means anything. Like,
Yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
thought, but yeah.
those are just
Yeah.
pleasantries. At the end of the day, you have to say like, am I offering something to this person, right? And
Hmm.
barring you having like a trust fund that you can use to buy your way into certain rooms and certain relationships, chances are you're going to have to just become so incredibly undeniable, which means you have to put in your 10,000 hours and become really excellent at what you're doing. So that when you begin to network with these people, some of them are going to be horizontal networking relationships, some of them are going to be slightly higher than you. At least, even if you don't necessarily have money or whatever thing, there is such
Hmm.
an undisputable quality to what you're bringing to the table that they feel like, yo,
Hmm.
listen, this is somebody who I need to keep in my relationship, in my
Exactly.
Rolodex, right? Because there's a part of scripture that I love that it says like your gift of mate will put you in front of kings.
Make
It'll
room
make
for you.
room for
Yes.
you. It'll
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
room for you. You know what I'm saying?
I
If
love
you're
that verse
so
as
good
well.
at what you do, you will begin to start forming all of these relationships, because at the end of the day, like, that's probably your most important currency, even more than the money, because your relationships can get you the money. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Exactly.
So to a Moist point, how do you start building all those relationships that are going to be critical to you leveling up? Is by becoming undeniable, becoming undisputable. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
thankfully, I've kind of seen that bear itself out in my life from the song that I made, thankfully, Winning Searchlight, which really kind of like opened up a lot of the world to me, because the song
Mhm,
itself was so good, thankfully, that it
mhm.
rose to the top, and that began to open up new things. And then the last thing I'll say is, like I said before, man, at the end of the day, kind of like Karis said, like, you are the brand, you are the CEO, you
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
the, in a sense, even if you have a team, you are the everything.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you have to be ready to get your hands dirty, and try to like work
Yeah.
in a sense in all of the different departments of your company
Absolutely.
until you can find somebody to take that over
Right.
for you. You know what I'm
To
saying?
take it. Yeah.
Yeah. At
That
this
was a
point,
that was a huge lesson for me too coming up. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. At this
Yeah.
point, I still don't have a manager. I would love a manager, and I want a manager. So, but you got to be patient. Just haven't found somebody. So, what that has done
Yeah.
is that has
Mhm.
forced me to learn a lot about what it means to be a good
On
manager,
yourself. Yeah.
how to
Do it
optimize
yourself.
my business. Right? I
Yeah.
have people in other positions, and God knows I would love to have them be like, "Yeah, take over it." But the problem is, I haven't
Yeah.
found one yet,
Yeah.
because I know what to look for. You know what I'm saying? So, all that saying,
Mhm.
number one, become undeniable and be ready to get your hands dirty and play the long game.
Yes. Yeah.
And
And stay
how?
consistent with that
Go
as
ahead,
well.
Amon. Yeah.
Staying consistent so that you're always relevant. You know what I mean? And do it in
Absolutely.
Mhm.
a unique way that separates you from the crowd, because the market is so oversaturated with talent, and
Yeah.
all over. So you have to find a way to make yourself stand out of the crowd.
Mhm.
Mhm. And how? I guess my question would be, Chope, you're talking about the long game. Um, how do you stay motivated with that? And where you can jump into if you want. How do you play the long game and not, get burnt out? We, this whole workshop is just about genres that don't necessarily get the most spotlight, in the Canadian
Right.
music
Especially
industry.
right.
Mhm.
How do you,
Stay
yeah,
motivated.
keep going up that hill and not, and not just lose it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who wants to kind
Boy.
of jump in there.
I
Okay,
mean,
well,
go ahead, Amoy.
sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Number one, it's like, oh my God, you gotta get into
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
thing for the right reason. You gotta
Yeah.
get into it for the right reason, because it will weed you out. If you're here
Yeah.
for like bottles and
The fame and
whatever
and the
and the
status.
fame, I
I know, right?
swear
You're gonna be
it'll
burnt
weed
out
you
real
out
Yeah.
quick.
so quick, so
Real
quick.
quick. Especially doing
Mhm.
it on an independent level too. We don't have the backing of a major label,
Yeah.
right? The whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So know why you're in this.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're in this because you love it. If you can see yourself, like, put it this way, for me, music, I would make music even if I wasn't making any money off of it. That's how I
I
know I
love,
love it.
I love.
That's how I know I love it, because like I don't,
Same.
obviously
Yeah.
you're gonna make money, like the way I see it, like with any business, like music or otherwise, right? You don't ever
Mhm.
chase money, you chase purpose. I know that sounds like a nice little cookie
But it's
cutter
true though. It's true.
but
It is
at
true.
the end of the day, like, money is the inevitable byproduct of doing something really well. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
That's why you never chase the
Mhm.
money. The money will come as a result of you doing it with purpose. You
Absolutely.
know what I'm saying? And so, number one, make sure
Mhm.
your motivations and your purpose is clear as to why you're doing this, who you're trying to serve, and then
Yeah.
create at your pace. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, remain adaptable. Yes, keep aware of trends, but at the end of the day, like, keep your mental health in check, keep your spirit in
Yes.
check. You
Yes.
can't be on 24/7. You
No.
can't do every single thing. So kind of like try to
Balance.
balance those two
Balance.
things when you're like, I
Mhm.
gotta be out, I gotta network, I gotta put out content. But yo, you need a Saturday off every 2 or 3
Take
or
it.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
Take
Mhm.
that, because I promise you, you will be so much better and so much more effective and efficient when you come back to it.
I agree with that so much. So, I mean, it's all about balance for sure. And for me, doing music, the reason why I decided to fully do music, I've always been a spiritual girl. Yes, I was raised up in the church,
Mm.
and they're very religious, but I can't consider myself very spiritual, not religious. And
Mhm.
the reason the co- that I do music is because I believe wholeheartedly that this is my calling.
Mhm.
There is no mistake why I was gifted this gift of music and
Yeah.
writing. And so the intent behind or within my music is to create music that will heal people. When they hear the music, they will get something from it that will bring them healing. Whether in that moment or along the line, they will get what they need from the music. That's the intent I put in my music. And also to I call myself an activator.
Mm.
So I intend to activate people as they see me doing what I love. They are inspired and motivated, and to go out and do what they love to do, whatever that is for them. And this is the fuel behind why I do my music. So I do not get burnt out. I don't get discouraged. I do get discouraged, but I don't allow myself to stay within that low
Yeah.
frequency. I allow it to move through me, and then I keep going. I use it as fuel to make to keep going even much more harder and smarter
Mm-hmm.
as I do
Because
my
you know
music.
your why. Because you know your
Yeah.
Exactly.
why.
Because I know the purpose. There's a bigger purpose, bigger than me, bigger than
Yeah.
everybody that's behind why I'm doing my music. You
Mm-hmm.
know?
I really love those answers. I think it speaks it. You guys kind of just get straight to the point as to how I see. I've asked that question before, and I get a lot of like, take a break, drink some water, do some meditation. I get a lot of like practical stuff, but not a lot of people have actually gone to. You have to know why you do it, and I think
Right.
that's very. I think that's a very strong point to take because even for myself, where I was just like, okay, been in Canada, trying it doesn't mean that Canada isn't a place. It may not be time for my music
True.
to
Mm.
get where I want it to be. Okay, let me try a change of environment. And I think one of the things that I've seen with even moving country and just in like regular everyday life is everything is gonna come with its frustrations.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
if you don't know why you are somewhere or why you're doing something, you end up just spinning around like a top, like going back and
Yeah.
forth
Mm.
in circles and
A
circles and
tumbleweed
circles.
going where the
Yeah,
wind
you're
blows.
not gathering any moss at all. And I think that's a very very strong point that applies even outside of
Mhm.
of music. Like everything and everyone, because it just reminded me of like Bob Marley's quote that everybody's gonna come with their problems and everybody's gonna have the potential to hurt you in some ways, just who you're willing to go through that with and
Exactly.
put
Yeah.
put up with. So I think that's a point that we can even apply outside of music.
Absolutely.
Anything,
um
anywhere in life. Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
And
everything
also
in life.
to a very important thing too that keeps me more. Because sometimes when I feel a little bit while coming up in this male dominated industry that
Mm.
is
Hmm.
reggae.
Hmm.
It can be very trying.
Mm.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
I look at is how am I still staying and serving my purpose? And
Mm.
as I do that, I keep on
Hmm.
reminding myself of that spirit or the universe, however you want to call it, God, source, love,
Yeah.
will give me little nudges. At first I
Yeah.
got this one nomination, my first junior nomination, and that was like my validation. Okay, so this one
Mm.
of the
Hmm.
validations because I validate myself.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
that gave me a validation from my peers and from the industry here that you are on the right path. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
universe
Yeah.
will send, and now I'm at 5 junior nominations. So the universe will give you the nudges to keep
Mm.
you motivated as well, to stay motivated, to stay within on your path when you're feeling
Hmm.
like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
What I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be doing. Like, why is it so
Exactly.
difficult?
Yeah.
The universe will give you nudges and give you little things that will keep you,
Hmm.
moving on
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
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 keep
and
going
Definitely.
on.
Definitely.
knowing your why will keep you, it'll keep you centered because
Mm-hmm.
a lot,
Yeah.
like, so you can spin out and you can burn out for any number of reasons, but one of the reasons a lot of
Hmm.
times people burn out is because you're 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 living a figment, you're not living reality, right? You're not
Right.
living the reality, you're not being honest, you're not being truthful, right? And it's very hard to keep up
Hmm.
a front, it's very hard to live up to a caricature, right?
Yeah.
And
Very
trust
true.
me, this industry will try to make you who it wants you to be, not
Absolutely.
and that may not necessarily be who you actually are. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
is which is why it's very important to remember your why, because when you know your why, you get to determine what success looks like for you. You get
Right.
to
Yeah.
determine what your benchmarks are, and you stay true to that. You get what I'm saying? And then when
Hmm.
this person or that person comes and tries to take you off course,
You
which is
know.
more
Yeah.
than
Nope.
likely
You're
going to
like, nope.
cause you to spin out sooner or
Yes.
later, be
Yeah.
able to be like, nope, that's
Mhm.
not for me. That's maybe
No
that's someone
thanks.
else's
Right.
story, but that
And
ain't me.
especially as a female too, for the females
Mm.
out there who
Yep.
are aspiring artists, it's very that right there, what Showpace talking about is so important.
Mhm.
You gotta know your why, you gotta know who you are as an
Mhm.
artist, what your
It's
values
very
are.
true. I can say
Yeah.
that to female in the industry.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So my next point, I see that we're kind of like coming down to Q&A time. It's just actually speaking about what some of the obstacles are that you faced on, your come up to get into where you are right now. What are some of the things that you've kind of had to weather as artists in this industry doing these genres?
We kind of touched on it, both of us, some of it already. The
Mm-hmm.
challenges for me
Yeah.
being a female in a male dominated industry has been, trust me, very trying. But like I said before, even if it's one person in that audience, as a lot of
Mm-hmm.
promoters are coming up would book me in a time slot that nobody's out there in the audience. There's nobody to perform to.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah.
like I said, even if it's one person, and I even wrote a song about it. Even if it's one person out there in that audience, that person is gonna get a show like it's 1,000 people or 10,000 people out there. You always stay
Yeah.
consistent. You show up and give your all. Master your craft as well. Master your craft, and just make sure that whoever sees you understands why you're on that stage, why you're in that position. They know for a fact that
Mm-hmm.
you can't be denied of why you're doing what you're doing. And
Yeah.
they in turn will, because a lot of my success have come from word of mouth and just people seeing me do this, and then they put in a good word, and I'm able to get introduced to another booker from that, and that's just how the support comes from me, from just
Yeah.
word of mouth, to be honest with you. So overcoming those challenges, you just have to stay centered within yourself, like Shopo was saying. It's the same. We're going back to the same thing. The staying centered within yourself, no matter what the challenges are. Knowing who you are, why you're there,
Mm-hmm.
and keep pushing on, because you will get your yes. You'll get a lot of no's, but you will get to your yes, and that yes will lead you to other
Yeah.
yeses, and so
And all
forth.
it
So
takes is one. All it takes
exactly,
is
you will
one
get to your
yes.
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely. For me, I think the most challenging thing has just been like building the right team. Building the right team. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? I've had teams which started off great, but then kind of became not great anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So you get what I'm saying? And so
Hmm.
I think that's just I don't know if it's because you're right. Like the kind of sounds that we make, it's still growing. At least I can speak for like Afrobeats, Afrofusion. It's kind of growing and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of new in Canada, right?
Yeah.
I think globally, and Amoy, correct me if I'm wrong about this. I could be wrong, but I think Afrobeats, Afrofusion is starting to enjoy some of what reggae and dancehall has
Absolutely,
enjoyed
absolutely, and I'm so
Yeah.
happy
globally,
about that.
Yeah.
I'm so happy about that too.
globally
Absolutely,
for
Yeah.
years,
yes,
right?
that
And
is true.
I
Yeah.
I have my theories about why that's the case, which we can talk about it at another point,
Another panel,
right?
another panel.
But notwithstanding, I think because of that, like I just don't know that the people around here know what to do with it yet. Know how to sell it, know how to
Right?
market it, know how to manage it. I
Yeah.
just don't
Yeah.
think, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like
I've heard that
It's a
before,
new
so I
product. Yeah.
it's a new product. So I've done showcases for and
Mm-hmm.
like Sony, Universal, Warner, they're all there. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So and so connecting with so and so at this, and I'm like, I've had management conversations, I've had label conversations that
Yeah.
didn't go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? And I'd like to think it's not because the music is whack, because hey, at the end of the day, y'all the ones who came to me and like you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it didn't go
Right.
anywhere. But it didn't go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if I don't think it's because I'm not good at what I do. I just don't know that a lot of people here are well equipped, which is part of the reason. In fact, again, if I can speak frankly, part of the reason I began to think, okay, I think I need to build an international team that can somehow partner with people who have a local understanding. But I don't
Yeah.
think I can look to some of them, not all, but I don't think I can look to some of the local people to help me take this thing internationally because like it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
far out of their purview of knowing
Yes.
how to sell this thing. And
Hmm.
so for me, the most challenging thing has been building a team, which is why I still ain't got a manager at this point. And I'm
I know
still
you will.
working.
You'll get that will come. That will come. Just keep
Thank
on
you,
putting the
Amoy.
music out there, and they will
Yeah.
come. Guarantee you. All of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you set your
Yeah.
intention, and you, like I said, you stay on
Mm-hmm.
your path. You make quality music, quality products, and you put it out there. The right people will come. It
Mhm.
may be that the
Mhm.
people that you're
Mhm.
looking for are preparing themselves. The
Yeah,
right people
man.
that you're
Yeah.
looking for are
Yeah.
right now preparing themselves to
I'll
come,
take that. I'll
yeah,
take that.
onto your path. And I had to learn that myself.
Yeah, yeah.
But fake it till you make it. Do what you can for yourself.
Yeah,
Do what
I'm
you can
yeah.
for yourself
Yeah, I'm
until
very gracious. I'm
you
very
attract
gracious.
those people. Yeah, until you attract the right people
Absolutely.
to you. Hmm.
Absolutely. And I'm very gracious that even in the absence of some, I have some people in position, but even with the absence of certain people, of me having to step into those places, I still continue to have opportunities showing up. And
There
to
you
a
go.
moist point, like there's confirmation and there's kind of like breadcrumbs that you are doing the right thing.
Hmm.
So just
Hmm.
keep going and,
Exactly.
yeah, keep going and doing what you're doing.
Yeah, the team will come.
Yeah.
And
Want to just end it? Yeah. Go ahead.
before I forget, Triple. Now that we've been introduced, we need to do some work
Yeah.
together as well. Some
Connections been made.
collabs together. Exactly.
Let's make it happen. Absolutely.
Because I
Yeah.
believe in
Yeah.
these synchronicities, and I paying
Yeah.
attention and
Yeah.
take action. So I'm putting it out there right now.
We will do it. We'll make it happen.
Yes.
That's where I'm the same more in terms of like believing in those things because
Yeah.
like I said, we've gone through, different groups of panelists to finally get to the panelists that we have for the
Mhm.
series finalized. And I always believe like everything's for a
Happy
reason.
for a
So
reason.
like I'm a big believer in those things as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the question that I kind of want to end it off on, I'm going to just ask for the attendees that are here. If you do have a question, feel free to send it to the Q&A. Yeah, I see someone here was just kind of referencing what we were talking about earlier in terms of getting in. We're working on trying to make that a little bit easier. Technology is supposed to make your life easier, but not not all the time.
Not all the time.
But do go ahead and send your questions. The question I have, just to end it off to you, panelists, is what do you think could be done better, if anything? If you think industry has been great and is, constantly improving and all of that, then you can feel free to say that as well. But done better for these genres, for reggae, dancehall, soca, Afrobeats. I feel, just listening to you talk, Chope, about Afrobeats coming up and enjoying some of what reggae's kind of gotten over the years. It's interesting because for me, I hear everyone else saying like, "Oh, Afrobeats is coming up," but for me, being part of the Caribbean community, Afrobeats has always been there. It
Been.
probably
Yeah. Been
wasn't
there. Exactly.
always called Afrobeats,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's always been there.
Yeah.
And so I think with these genres that reggae and Afrobeats have in common, is that they're genres that have kind of forced the world to stop and pay attention. Like when Bob Marley came out, like if you didn't know reggae, like he was
You're
making
under
sure
rock.
you knew it.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
those
Yeah.
all those people that kind of have come out. I think like Wizkid has
Hmm.
done the same. All those guys that are coming out of Nigeria, right now, and just kind of
Yeah.
forcing
Yeah.
the world to stop
To
and
listen.
Yeah.
listen
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you think can be done better now that they're here? The genres are in your face. People are doing them. People are receiving them well and loving them. What do you think could be done better in the Canadian industry to just kind of facilitate that growth and
The
development?
radio support. There needs to be a lot more radio support and commercial
Mm.
support, not just from the independent radios, but the others mainstream radios. All of the platforms need to give us more support because we are, and it's so
Yeah,
multicultural here too. So the all
it
of
is.
those need to represent the multiculturalism that we have here when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to music on radio. Period.
Mhm.
And then also teaching the ones having programs or events that teach the upcoming artists how to acquire these funding bodies, these funding
Mm-hmm.
opportunities that are out there as well, teaching them how
Very
to go
true.
about getting that done.
Very, very true.
Mhm.
How about you, Shope? Anything from you?
I think one of the things that comes to mind, I actually see some organizations doing it. I remember,
Yeah.
and I think I'll say them because it's to their credit. And I'm thinking about Karis and the Junos, for example, right? So
Yeah.
I see them doing it. So I remember a couple of years ago, I looked at the nominees for like world music slash for two things. This was before they made it global music as opposed to world music when it was still world music. And
Yeah.
historically, like if you look at what world music is, it was kind of like everything that doesn't fit into what we
Fit
understand
into
to be
yeah.
Western music. We're just gonna call you guys
Mhm.
world, right?
We're just gonna
Yeah.
stick in it.
Right?
Yeah, that's
And
true.
and times have evolved and sounds have changed, and now you literally have these sonic palettes that are no longer your prototypical. Like when we say world, we all know what we imagine when we say world. We're thinking of like tribal sounds, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
ethnic, yeah.
And it's too broad of a category to encapsulate all of these different genres because a lot of these things are not beginning to play with sounds, right? And
Mm.
so I remember seeing some of the nominees. I think like I'm very happy for these people, but when I think of like some of the sounds, like these are still very prototypical of what we considered world like 30, 40 years ago. I would
Yeah.
love to see like I would
Yeah.
love to see new acts. It doesn't have to be me. I'd like to see new acts that are kind of
No,
like
I get
playing,
it.
that are creating these new sounds that are
Hmm.
really blurring the lines between what is R&B and what is dancehall and what is Afrobeat. Like these new fusion sounds, the more contemporary understanding
Hmm.
of what we consider when we think of Afrobeats, Afrofusion, Latin,
I agree.
reggae, etc. Right?
Yeah, I
For
agree.
sure.
So I remember one year thinking like, wow, this seems kind of dated. But then subsequent to that, I saw the definition was changed, right? And I was
Mm.
like, it's like, good job, guys,
Nice.
good job.
They're
I
working. I have to give them.
Yeah.
They are doing the
Yeah.
best.
good job, right?
Yeah, they're doing the best they can. I
Yeah,
agree with that too. I
Hmm.
being able to embrace change because everything is moving in different way now. Everything is fusing together and changing, and we need to move along with these changes and not be afraid of these new changes that are developing within the music that we're making now. you
absolutely,
know
absolutely. Yeah,
Sometimes they think, oh, it's changed, it's shifted, it's not the same as that. So I don't know where to put it, I don't know what to do with it, but being open to these changes that are happening is a good thing. And I agree with you on that, Shope.
yeah. And so I would just encourage them to keep doing what it seems like they're doing, which is being very intentional to keep up with the times and keep up with the new
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
and trying to just trying to get away from the traditional understanding that is no longer
Exactly.
relevant to like the
Right.
present time. And I
Yeah.
don't know how you go. I don't know how you go about doing that behind the scenes. Maybe it's just consulting with more like stakeholders within this world
Hmm.
and trying to have them bring their expertise to the foray. So that's one of the things that I would see in addition to a more suggestion of maybe more radio support. I would say like,
Hmm.
okay, guys, from kind of like a top level at the highest levels of everything,
Hmm.
let's adapt, right? And let's
Exactly.
have these modern sounds represented.
Exactly. More representation for sure.
Those are beautiful answers. Very insightful answer. I don't think it could have been said better. So I really, really appreciate that. I see that we don't have any questions, but I just want to ask, what do you guys have coming up? What can we expect from Amoy? What can we expect from Chope in the near future?
Mhm.
Just before we wrap up, just kind of let everyone know what you have going on.
But right now, my latest release is Water. It's out now wherever you buy your music online. And it's just continuing to promote this body of work. I have a few shows booked for Montreal and Ottawa, so all the Ottawa and Montreal fans, we're coming there in November, and then within the new year, we're looking to tour the album. So look out, say on my website www.amoy.com. We will have all the new dates posted there for the new year for 2023. We're intending to go to Europe and South America, wherever the music calls. We will be going. So look out, and if you haven't already gotten the album Water, please go out and support that.
Dude, I got you
Amazing.
pulled up right now.
Yeah, Sonny.
Chope is on it.
Yeah, Shope.
Guys, don't sleep,
Amazing.
eh? Don't sleep. Anyway. No,
How
I'm
about
actually
you,
I'm
Chope?
about to go bump that right now in my house.
Yes, thank you, thank
Keep my
you.
kids awake. No, similar situation. So I dropped an EP called "Things We Say," um,
Yeah,
late July, early August, and so I'm deep in the rollout of that right now. So
nice.
thankfully, Halova is doing quite well. I'm in talks with my Nigerian team to try to figure out how we can amplify that sound on that
Yeah,
part of the world. So I'm really hoping I can touch ground very recent. Sorry, very soon.
Nice.
And then just more and more music, more and more music for me. I think I know what my sound is. I know what my
Mm-hmm.
mission is, and so no shows for now per se, because I'm kind of like taking a bit of a break from the road. But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean no content. So enjoy the music that's already there right now, and look forward to some more. And also look forward to a Moy and Chope song.
Yes, and so it
And
is.
we're
And
speaking
so it
the
is.
Juno win over
Yes,
Amoy and the manager over
Oh,
very,
Chope.
thank
very, very
you.
good. Talk about actually confusing them. Let's make it something that doesn't sound like.
Right, like
Exactly.
anything.
That's what we do anyways. I hear that all the time. Oh my gosh. I hear that. I've been hearing that. We are ahead of the times. We're always
Exactly.
Yeah,
ahead of the
yeah.
times, you know?
Well, well, music is a global language, right? So it's
Right.
gonna continue
Exactly.
evolving and picking up all the experiences as we go through this life. So
100%.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the song. You guys could like send it to Afrowave and we'll put it out there too.
Yes. Yes.
We'll make
Yeah.
it happen for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But thank you guys so much. You both spoke so eloquently, and I really appreciate you just, spending your time to come and just speak about your experience and doing it in such a beautiful way. I really, really appreciate that. I see that we have no questions. I wouldn't have any questions either because you guys were so clear and transparent. So I'm not even gonna look at it as a bad thing.
Well,
But
thank
I
you
want
for
to
having
thank
us. And thank you for having us
thank you for being
Afterwave.
here.
Yes.
I want to thank
100%.
all the attendees too for being on. I
Yes.
always say the workshops are
Absolutely.
not the same without having that audience and that engagement. Even when you guys are quiet, just knowing that you're here and you're listening to the conversation is a lot. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. We have our final workshop next week, Thursday. That's going to be on diversifying your income in the industry. So looking outside of that typical like recording artist stream, and seeing the different ways that you can gain income in the music industry. We're gonna have four panelists with us for that. So looking forward to everyone being there. Tell everyone to register at Afrowaveto. Once again, thank you, Amoy. Thank you, Shope, and I wish you both and everyone on an amazing night.
Thank you
And
so
thank you,
much.
Shopi, for being a great panelist,
Oh yeah,
Thank you.
co-panelist with me as well. Great conversation.
The
yeah.
feeling is very mutual. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Have a great night.
You guys
You
have a
guys
good evening.
too.
Bye.